concepts. We spoke about a lot about business in the last session. We ended up with understanding the difference between an entrepreneur and a businessman. We're going to look at or start this session by broadly understanding the 3 ways in which a business can grow. And if you open any textbook or any website online, there are many other names given over here, but broadly, in my opinion, you can classify all of them into these 3 categories. Okay, now what are these categories? One of the category is bootstrapping. Bootstrapping is typically what happens. The whole idea of bootstrapping in a business is you start small, you grow, you don't acquire or you don't buy something readily available. You build your own products, you build your manpower, you build your capacity, you build your manufacturing capacity. Slowly you're growing by yourself. This is called as, another word also used is organic growth. Okay, so the meaning of organic growth is you are starting and growing without getting any direct external help. Okay, as a firm, you are doing it all by yourself. Okay, that's called as the bootstrapping model. The second one, of course, is acquisition. Acquisition is basically buying out. It's also called as inorganic growth. Okay, inorganic growth. So let's say that I'm a big company in technology. Let's say I'm a Google, right? I'm trying to look at what is the next big technology for me. I mean, YouTube came a decade ago. It's been a very big success, no doubt about it. Now we are waiting to see what is the next big thing for Google. Let's say that they found a small company making a very wonderful product, and the product is, for various reasons, the guys in the Google with all their money are not able to replicate it. Could be many reasons. One is the technology might be complicated, or the other thing is it might be patented. I will talk about patents also in this session, so you'll understand what is the meaning of patent. But for whatever reason, if I am in a position not to replicate what they're doing, or if I want to replicate, it's going to be very costly, and more importantly, it's going to take me a lot of time. And I don't have time. Guys, money can be generated. Time cannot be generated. Please understand this. So people don't mind spending money if it can cut down the time. It's not just at an individual level, it is also at a company's level. So then the big company, like Google in my example, can go ahead and buy this or acquire this small company. But this is the way in which a growth can also happen. So by buying, what am I doing? I'm getting something which I did not have overnight. Overnight meaning the acquisition process might take 2-3 months. Sometimes it might take 7-8 months also. But if I want to develop something like that, it might take me years. So I'm cutting short that entire time, and this process is the process of acquiring something. So these are 2 ways. Then the third way is called as strategic partnering. Now, if the person does not want to sell, or I do not want to buy completely. Let's say I am a company A and I'm interested in, so company B has many products. This is the product line I am interested in. Now this company B says either buy me completely, or I will not sell you, or I will, I will not sell you only this part. But company B sees some advantage in being associated with me. I also see some advantage. Of course, that's the reason why I'm trying to buy this product X, let's say. So then what we can do is we can come together as partners and say that as far as this product is concerned, we will partner together and we will grow this product together in the market, so that my competitors will not just be fighting with only B or only A anymore. It's the combination of the 2 of them. Our 2 resources together will be pulled in, at least for this particular product. So that's a strategic partnership. It could be for a single product, it could be for an entire company, whatever else it is. So basically this is in-house bootstrapping. Acquisition is outright buying of something. In between these 2 lies something called as a partnership. Okay, think of partnership like you're dating, you don't want to marry off the person that comes your way, right? So what happens? You meet the person for a few times, you see, is this partnership going to be going forward or not? So quite a few times, partnerships might lead to acquisitions also, okay? Priyanka, strategic partnership, look at this. Many examples, Maruti Suzuki at one point in time. So now Maruti is an Indian company. Suzuki was a Japanese company, right? So when Suzuki wanted to sell cars in India at that point in time, the rules were that a foreign company cannot own 100% of a manufacturing company in automobiles in India. So they had to partner with a local company, which is Maruti, And basically it was a joint venture or a partnership. Basically, I don't remember exactly, was it 50, 50, 49, 51%, but it was a partnership. So these two companies came together, and the Maruti Suzuki cars that we've come to know over the years, which have become very famous, is one example of a partnership. Yes, partnership of Voda Idaphone also can be an example of it. There are many partnerships. In fact, because of the rules in which the way in which the rules were laid some time back, almost all automobile companies that came way back in the past had to make some kind of a partnership. For example, Hero Honda. Okay, Hero is an Indian company. Honda is again not an Indian company. So when these two partnered, we have our vehicles, the Hero Honda vehicles that you guys are aware of. Right, so all these are examples of partnerships. Clear? Priyanka and Suki, yes, that's a very good example. Let's move on, guys. So these are the three ways in which the business can grow. Okay, one question coming your way, not on this, but based on the theory we discussed in the previous class. I want to see how many of you remember what we discussed in the last class. So here's 45 seconds for you. Please give me the answer. So I don't know how many of you remember this word, intrapreneur. It's not a spelling mistake, it's not a typo. It is something different. Entrepreneur, you all know. I believe I discussed entrepreneur also, but if not, I'll discuss it right now anyway. But give it a go, guys. Okay, I've got two answers, two different answers. Now I will not comment, others are still answering. Okay, C, D, C, D. Okay, this seems to be the answer. Again, another C I got. Okay, I'm getting many C's and only two D's. I got a A also. Let me first help you remember the meaning of entrepreneur. Now, entrepreneur, everybody know. All of you know the meaning of it. Entrepreneur is basically a person like an entrepreneur, but he is not independent. Okay, so what is the meaning? The idea is, look, if I have a company, let's say like typically it happens in the best example is your Google, Microsoft. These are the best examples to talk about on entrepreneurs. So what they do is they want the next best product to come out. And they realize that, look, no matter how good I am as a CEO, I can't think about everything. So what they do, ideally, is all these companies will have small projects. Independent projects. They will have small independent projects funded by the company. It's owned by the company. They identify people who are interested in taking up this project. So their sole purpose, this person who is interested in taking this small project within the company and building it, is called as an entrepreneur. So he works exactly the same way as an entrepreneur. First, he has to reach out to the top management of Google and convince them that, look, this product is worth investing even a little bit amount. So put me onto this project. Let me see if this product can be making money for you. So first I have to convince them that, look, this is a good product to at least try. Once it is convinced, then they'll give me some funding. I will have my small team. I will start building my product from there onwards. So from there onwards, my journey will start. But the thing you need to realize is, while the problems he's going to face more or less will be like an entrepreneur, not everything is like an entrepreneur. For example, if you look at it, he is definitely an employee of a large organization. He is definitely an employee of a large organization, right? Because, as I said, that's the definition of an entrepreneur. He is not completely independent. He is a part of an organization. Okay. He has been tasked with the job of innovating a new product. Yes, that is also correct. I've given you just an example like that. Okay. The third is faces high risk and high rewards. Now remember, an entrepreneur faces high risk and high reward. If his product fails, his entire time is wasted. Right? His life is, at least for the last 4 or 5 years, is wasted. But what happens if you're talking about an entrepreneur, failing? So I am working in Google. Google is paying me. Google is paying me to try something new. If it fails, I'll move on to the next one. My salary is not getting cut. I don't have to worry where will I pay my bills from next day. right? So the risk is very little comparatively, which also means the rewards are also little, because as an entrepreneur, if your products get success, you will get all the benefit because you are the owner of the product. As an entrepreneur, you are not the owner of a product, you are working for the company. So if the product becomes a hit, it is the company which will be making money. So the reward is also not so great. Yes, you might get a bonus, you might get some kind of recognition, you might get a promotion, all that is fine. But it is not compared to what an entrepreneur can get if the product is successful. So C is also not your answer. C is basically, he does not face high risk and high reward. So C is your correct answer. But let us look at D also. Now, because he is part of a larger organization, he will have better resources than an entrepreneur. Very clearly, right? I don't have to worry about money. Once my boss is convinced, he will give me money for the project because I have convinced him. I don't have to worry about people because I'm in a big organization. If my product is really good, I can ask my bosses to give some personnel to me, to give some resources to me, whether it's people resources or technology resources, whatever else it is, I can get it if I can convince just my boss. Whereas an entrepreneur, that's not the case. You can get money if you convince your investor, but you need people. You can't just convince your investor to get people. People is your headache, right? And trying to scout for technology is your headache. So all that becomes your headache. So an entrepreneur will have better resources than an entrepreneur. Okay, so that's your correct answer, which is so actually A, B and D are associated with an entrepreneur. So C is not associated, hence A, B, D are not correct. C is the correct answer for this question, right? So by this question, I hope you also understood what is the meaning of this person called entrepreneur, right? Let's move ahead, guys. Okay, so now today we're going to dedicate this entire session looking at or trying to understand these concepts. There are a lot of names that I've put over here. This is something that you need to understand when you're going for this innovation and entrepreneurship kind of an exam. You could have questions coming your way from this. So first, so I've just put the names. I'll not explain all of them here. I have each slide for each one of them. So we'll be looking at POC, prototype, pilot versus MVP. We have all these. There's no point reading this out. Anyway, I have them coming up in the slides. So let's move on. Let's understand each one of these words very clearly. Okay. The first one is POC. POC is proof of concept. This is a phrase which you need to understand from the perspective of an entrepreneur. So what is this proof of concept? Proof of concept is basically a small exercise or test. Okay, it's to test the real world potential of an idea which is not perfected. Okay, so proof of concept is, can this be a viable idea? First of all, I'm not talking about will it make me money or not. That's a different idea. First of all, is it possible for me to implement this idea in the real world? So the idea is not fully there. You're still conceptualizing and you're trying to look at, can this be having a real world potential? Does it have any benefit to the real life potential? So that exercise or test which I do is called as a proof of concept. So usually where there's this proof of concept come into play, when you're talking as an entrepreneur to an investor, they usually ask you for a proof of concept. So typically what happens is, as an entrepreneur, you go to an investor saying that, look, hey, I have got this nice idea, can you fund me the money for this? So the entrepreneur asks, fine, the idea is there, fine, but will it have real world applications, or more importantly, can you bring it to life? Right? So give me something called as a POC. So come back to me when you have a proof of concept. I'll give you a little money for you to do your research and bring me this proof of concept. But if you prove to me that this concept can be applied or brought into the real world, I will be giving you the funding. So they will ask you for something called as a proof of concept. So it is not about delivering the idea. You're not talking about, so if I'm talking about, let's say I gave you an example last time, right? Hoverboard. Hoverboards are, I don't know if it's reality or not, at least not in the commercial sense, objects that can float above the ground, few inches above the ground without touching it. They can move like that. So hoverboard, if that's an idea, I'm not talking about whether it is technologically feasible, or I'm not talking about how do I make it a reality. Okay, but can that be done right now? It's an idea, but do we have the technology right now which can get this done? right? I'm not talking about is it going to be costly, cheaper, will the people buy it, all that is later. My first question is, fine, do we have the wherewithal to bring that idea to the real world? I'm not even talking about will it make me profit or not. So it is not about delivering. Okay, first you are checking whether it is feasible. That's the whole idea for your proof of concept. No, beta test is not an example of proof of concept. Nidhi, thanks a lot for your comment. Priyanka, beta test I'll talk about. Let me write a note of it. Beta test. Okay, so I'll talk about this, but before we move on, guys, please click on the subscribe button if you are if you like these sessions. Click on the notification as well as the like button. There are a lot more sessions coming your way. In fact, the exam is on 9th or 8th of April, I believe. So we have a live analysis also on that day. In fact, I'll be taking the analysis for CMAT exam at that day in the evening. So be tuned. You click on the notification button, you'll be getting the notification of all the sessions that I'm taking in this session for this exam. Anyway, so what is the meaning of this beta test? Now, beta test is not a proof of concept, my friends. Beta test is just before release. Okay, it is kind of like a pilot. Slight difference. It is like a pilot. You can say that more or less they are kind of similar. The whole idea for a beta test is, I'll explain to you what is the meaning of a pilot anyway, that's there. Beta test is something where you have a product, you made it, now you want to check if there are any, so you've tested it, you have done all your testing from your side, okay. So there is an alpha test and there is a beta test. Alpha testing is where the makers, the manufacturers or the designers themselves will test. So this is more like a self-testing. So you test it yourself, meaning not an individual. If a group of people are making it, if a group of people are making it, that group will only test it in all possible ways that they can think of. But remember, when you have 5 or 10 or even 100 people testing it, there is no guarantee that all the possible scenarios have been tested, right? Because when you release it, there will be millions of people who will be using it. So somebody might do something which might crash the system, for example. So probably these people are, they might be brilliant, but they might not be able to do things which, hundreds or rather millions of people can try doing it. Right? So this is called as alpha testing, where you first make sure that obvious mistakes are taken care of. You try to your best extent and fix up all the bugs. Then you have something called as a beta. So beta testing is basically the second phase where you now give it out to few people who are not from your group of manufacturers or designers. You give it out to outside people, but not to everybody. You give it out to few people. Okay, this is called as a beta test. Right? Beta comes after alpha, it's like A and B. So beta comes after alpha. Typically beta will be for a slightly more larger audience, but clearly it is nowhere compared to what the product can do when it is selling. So beta is still restricted, smaller audience, but definitely much bigger than alpha. The audience will be much bigger than alpha. And of course, you will, again, the purpose of a beta test is before going live, you are making sure that there are no problems, or if there are any problems reported, you will correct them. Okay, that's called as a beta testing. Devesh, A-B testing is not related to this. A-B testing is a marketing term. Okay, well, if I start answering these questions, we'll be going completely away from it. But one last question I take, what is this A-B testing? Now, let me give you an example. A-B testing is basically a marketing phase to understand how an ad will perform. Okay, now it's like this. If you give an ad number 1, and you see that, okay, this ad number 1 gave me revenue of 2 lakhs. Okay, now how do I say whether this is good or bad? I don't have anything to compare it with, right? So when you're talking about A-B testing, you're trying to figure out which ad in relative terms is going to give you a better result. But then the point that you have to make is, or the point that you need to understand is, I can't do ad 1 at one point in time and then ad 2 in another point in time and then compare these two revenues which are not alike. The reason why the comparison is not perfect is if ad 1 is done in the month of Jan, Feb, March and ad 2 is done in the month of April, May, June. Now let us imagine that this is an ad for kids. Now Jan, Feb, March are typically your exam times, right? Whereas April, May, June are typically your vacation times. So probably your ad 2 is doing better in the month of April, May, June, not because the ad is so great, just because its timing is correct. So you will not be able to quantitatively determine is ad 1 better or ad 2 better. In fact, another example could be a lot of movies have not performed well despite being a good movie because they were released at the wrong time. So what A/B testing tries to do is it tries to keep all the parameters same, and then it will compare the results. It is not one after the other, it is simultaneous testing for similar audience, similar timeline, similar budget. So everything will be more or less comparatively equal for both. Then they will check the result and they say which ad is doing better. That's in simple terms the meaning of A/B testing. Okay? Is that clear, Devesh? Now, if you get into the depths of it, there's a lot more to it. I have given it to you in the most simplistic terms. You will anyway learn, because guys, if I sit here and start teaching you marketing, then I'm taking away the job of your professor in the B school. So that's not the purpose of the class today. So I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. Yeah, see, Aurora, running a test with different variations, the whole idea of A and B itself is there are two different ads, na? So there is variation automatically. That goes without saying. You have to check which ad is performing better, means you are trying to see which variation is better. It goes without saying that they are not same. But the parameters on which they are put forward are all same, but the content itself will be different for both A and B. Fast second strategy. Shinaz Ahmed, with respect to what are you talking about fast second strategy? I am not able to understand that. Okay, frankly guys, I will not claim to say that I know everything that you're asking me out there. So there are certain things I might not have heard of. So you have to give me the context for me to understand, right? Let's move ahead. Okay, so the next thing is prototype. Now prototype is typically comes after your proof of concept. Okay, so what is a prototype? This is now we are talking about implementation of the concept. Okay. So we are talking about implementation, so visible, tangible or functional manifestation of an idea. Okay, so you're talking about an idea now bringing to fruition. You are trying to build something where the idea is now implemented. Okay, so that is called as a prototype, and prototype is always, it is tangible, visible, right? It's it's basically an output that you're trying to see whether it's output of an idea, right? That's what is called as a prototype. Typically it is used when you have a concept or a hypothesis about a solution, but you're still uncertain about how it looks, feels. So typically, so if I say I want a I don't know, so let's take, for lack of examples, I keep going back to this hoverboard. Probably I love this idea of hoverboards a lot. So now this idea is there. I say that, okay, the technology exists that it can float a vehicle. But now when I say, okay, so there are two different things. Idea, then I say technology exists to make the vehicle float. But I want to see how the vehicle will look. So now once I put that technology into a vehicle and make the vehicle, how will it look? That is called as a prototype. Now I'll make a single or one or two objects like that, and this will be typically handmade. These are not made in a manufacturing assembly line. Typically the designers, manufacturers or the concept builders basically sit handmade item that they make, and they present this to the board of directors or somebody or the investors to say that, okay, look, this is how the product will look. And then they will be working to make sure the prototype, once it is approved, once it gets the recognition of at least the board or the people who are giving them the money, will now take over and then becomes the product. So once the prototype is used, tested, all that is done, when the basic problems are sorted out and the prototype's working, then you will start putting it in the assembly line, which is basically the production happening. Okay? Right, Kartikeya, yes, prototypes are used not just in Auto Expo. Auto Expo is the biggest example. You can see all kinds of, so you see the concept cars, you keep seeing, right? See, all these concept cars are prototypes because they are not produced in bulk. One or two cars they make, basically to showcase that, look, this technology, if I put it in the car and make it, this is how the car will look. Okay, so for a lot of these concept cars, they might not even take off. But they're just trying to experiment what could be a better way. In fact, you have few cars where there is, instead of a wheel, normal traditional wheel, you'll be having a spherical wheel. Spherical wheel means 360 degrees, 720 degrees, complete sphere. And the advantage is the car can go straight, it can just go sideways, this way, go straight. So that's one of the advantages. It can go diagonally also because you have a sphere. So all that is possible. So these are all concept cars. It's a prototype. Yes, we can see the practical idea, so you can see the practical scenario of an idea in it. Suki, that's correct. Okay. In fact, that's what I said. A proof of concept shows if a product, feature or system can be developed. So proof of concept, it says that, look, there is an idea. Now, is there a technology which is available to make this idea come into reality? That is what a proof of concept talks about. Then prototype says, okay, if you put these two together, how will my final product look? Right? So certain times what happens is that technology which is existing right now can make the object so huge that it becomes practically unviable in the current scenario. So while the proof of concept exists, the prototype might say that, okay, it is not so great to be used right now. So then you'll say either the technology has to become smaller, the idea behind it, the idea is the same, but the implementation of it should be happening at a smaller scale. Smaller scale means the dimension should be smaller, and then you work towards it, right? So that's what a prototype does. Next is, what is a pilot? Now pilot, I said, now I already explained what is the meaning of beta. Pilot is very, very close to a beta. The whole idea is, look, I have let's say typically a software. So I have a software ready. It mostly happens in gaming also. I don't know how many of you play games, but I play a lot of games, to be very honest. So whenever a new game is developed by the testers, they release something called as the pilot, or sometimes called as a beta version also, beta or a pilot version. So basically the whole idea is this access will be given only to few people in a small locality, and they are not from the company, they are outsiders. That's why I said they are very, very close. Beta and pilot are kind of close to each other in terms of meaning. And they release it out saying that, okay, if there is a problem, you please tell us the problem. So the whole idea over the beta testing or the pilot phase is to make sure that there are no more glitches. You are resolving as many glitches as possible when used by random audience. So the people who will be selected are not the people with always tech background. They will take people with tech background, without tech background. So all kinds of people will be there in your pilot and beta. Because you, see guys, if you know how to use a product, you might not cause it to fail. Because you know the right way to use it. But not necessary that once you sell it, everybody knows how to use a product. So what if I give them a software technology, the person does not know how to use it, and he gives some random commands, which the software is not able to understand it, and it hangs. So that could be a real life scenario, which a programmer will never do it knowingly, because he knows subconsciously that if I do this, this will not work out. So while I'm supposed to test it, subconsciously I know it's not supposed to be done, so I don't do it. So that is the reason why alpha testing is not perfect. Because people know what to expect, what not to expect subconsciously also. But when I give it in the beta testing phase, I give it to people who do not know how to handle the product also. In such case, the most random entries will be done, and I will take a look at all the errors that could be happening because of random entries, which an alpha testing might not be able to bring out. Right? So that's basically more or less the meaning of pilot. Thankfully somebody asked about beta, so I explained more or less about pilot and beta there itself. Okay, so basically you see whether a product is ready to be launched at a larger phase, right? So you're talking about, can I now say that all India it's ready? So before I go to all India, I might release it only in one state or one district, right? One district, and then probably go to a state, because I can have better control on who is using it, smaller audience relatively. Then I can say that, okay, if I give it out, let's say I'm currently in Bangalore. So if I say Karnataka, I will give it out to the entire Karnataka population, but only Karnataka. So instead of giving it out to the 130 crore population across the country, I might do it only for a few crores of population here, where I can control faster and better. Then if I test it out for, let's say, a month or 2 months, I can figure out all the issues that are there, solve them, and then I say, okay, now I'm satisfied, I will roll it out to the larger audience. Now, despite that, there is no doubt that it will not crash. It will still crash. Today we can see every once in a while your phone crashes, every once in a while your Windows crashes. It happens. But that is, even after extensive testing, it happens. So that it does not, so pilot testing successful, beta testing successful does not mean that it is error free. It's just that you have limited most of the errors. Okay. So let's go ahead. Yeah, so other thing is sometimes you can also get a sense of success or failure. In fact, lot of times it so happened that a pilot was not successful and hence led to the closure of the product. So when I started, so pilot, see beta typically, one difference you can talk about, beta typically is kind of free. Beta usually is not very costly. They sell it, they don't sell it ideally, they will give it to people who sign up for beta for free. Pilot could be a product released, but you might have to pay if you want to buy it. And that's one of the small differences you can talk about pilot and beta, right? So when I release, so let us say that I want to produce I have a very good technology, I made a very nice product, but I'm not sure whether everybody will like it. So what I'll do is, if I say the product is worth 5,000 rupees, now if I want to release it across the country, I have to produce it in lakhs and I have to make sure that every state, every district, my supply channels are there, my product is available everywhere, but I'm not sure. So what I might do is, I might say, let me try it out in one of the metro cities. Okay, depending upon what kind of a product. If it's a product which is like, which is something which I expect people to use from the metro cities, let's say I take Bengaluru itself. Okay, now I might release it in Bengaluru and see how it performs in terms of the product taking off for the people. And if I feel that the response has not been that great, I will try to reduce the price from 5,000 to 4,000 or something like that, and still the response is not great. It means, for whatever reason, the people in Bengaluru are not really accepting the product. And Bengaluru being not just one type of people, you have different cultures over here. You have people from Tamil Nadu, you have people from North, West Bengal, North, then East, West, South, you have all kinds of people here. So when you have a mixture of people and still it is not able to take off, then there's something wrong with the product. I might think a second time before releasing it to all over the country. So pilot will sometimes also helps you understand whether a product can be a success or a failure. The next thing is an interesting concept called minimum viable product. Now what is this concept of minimum viable product? So usually this phrase is used in the tech domain. It's used in the tech domain. This is a very interesting idea, and this actually I have been a part of a couple of tech companies where this was done. I'll give you an example of a minimum viable product. So let us say Swiggy, we all know Swiggy, right? So let us say Swiggy, initially when they started off, they used to have a chat box where humans used to sit. They used to chat with you, you can call them, they will answer your queries. Now if you notice, it is AI driven today, right? But the whole idea for Swiggy was, can this AI substitute my manpower and take care of the problems without intervening of humans? So what they tried to do, or what they did at certain point in time, is instead of directly jumping from human interface to an AI interface, they tried to see something called as a minimum viable product. So basically what it means is, I will try to put, for the customer, it appears as if it's an AI. So what is my purpose? My purpose is to see, will this idea that I'm talking about, implementation of AI, solve my problem of having too many people handling chat? Right? I have to have a huge manpower to handle these chats. So can this idea of AI solve my problem? So the idea is, will this AI be acceptable to the customers, or do they always want to talk to a executive? So that is the uncertainty that I have right now. So I want to test that. I'm not worried about AI can be built or not. My worry is, I can spend money, I can spend resources to build it, but if I build it and the people say that, look, I don't like a robot, or I don't want to talk to a robot, I always want to talk to a person, then my robot is useless. So first what I'll try to do is, I will try to keep the interface, it will look like an AI interface, but the back end is hollow, it's actually people. And when you as a customer are trying to talk, you will feel as if you're talking to a robot. So the whole idea is, without making the full product, because the AI part is where the huge amount of resources and money are required. So without knowing the customer's acceptance or not, Swiggy will not want to put their money and resources in it. So they will test it out, and if the people start accepting the idea that, okay, I'm talking to a robot, but my queries are getting answered, then Swiggy will put money to invest money to make sure that, okay, now I'll design actually a robot which will behave in this fashion, because people don't mind talking to a robot. Right? They are not having the mindset that, okay, it should always be a human being that is talking to me. As long as their query is ordered, I don't care who is taking care of my query. So if that is what the acceptance is, then I will put money, then I'll take out these people, I'll actually put the artificial intelligence network over here, then I'll go forward. So this shell kind of a idea where only one part is shown to the customers, the back end typically is not what you are claiming it to be, because making that actually is much more costlier and time consuming, so you want to test it out. This idea is called as a minimum viable product. Okay, so it's a version of a new product which allows the teams to collect maximum amount of validated learning about customers with the least effort. So what is the least effort here? Coding is the biggest effort, and making that AI is the biggest effort for me. I can always hire 10 people to sit and answer in yes or no's or in structured format. They will not be allowed to type whatever they want. So there will be a format that will be given to them. They have to answer only according to that. Then I will test it out whether the people like it or not, whether the customers will like it or not. If the customers like it, then I can program a computer to do the same thing. That's what it is. Okay. So landing page or a service with an appearance of an automation, that's exactly what I gave you, but which is finally manually run behind the scenes. Once I get a validation, I will take the manual part of it out of it and put the automation behind it. Okay. So that's the meaning of MVP. Right? Minimum viable product. Once again, friends, a reminder, if you like my sessions, if you like my explanation, please click on the like button as well as subscribe to the channel and the notification button so that you keep knowing about what's going to happen about, with respect to CMAT exam, what sessions are upcoming for you. Right. Let's move on. The next is GMV, which is very, very widely spoken about. It's a very, very well used and actually abused term nowadays called GMV, which is the gross merchandised value. So what is this gross merchandised value? Again, I'll take a simple example to help you. So if you have a Kirana store, let us say I have a Kirana store. I sell, I don't have, but if I have, I'll be happily sitting there. But yeah, I can sell all kinds of food items, small packaged food. I can sell your daily use items, soaps, this, that, and all. Fine. Now, if you notice, none of those things actually belong to me, right? I am just a store owner. I stock them and I sell them. So basically, I am a retailer. Now, if I take a small example, if I sell a soap of rupees 30, I don't know what the cost of soap is, 30 rupees, let's say I take. So there's a soap which costs 30 rupees. Then in this 30 rupees, the company is, that is what I am charging the customer. But I did not manufacture the soap. So I have to buy the soap from the wholesaler. So let's say I bought it at 25 rupees and I'm selling it at 30 rupees. My money is 5 rupees. This is called as my revenue. My revenue is 5 rupees. But gross merchandise value talks about the total value of the product sold through you. So here my GMV is 30 itself. I am a middleman. I am not making anything. I am just buying from here and giving it there. So for me, the revenue should be the amount of money I am making in between. That is called as my revenue margin, right? But the gross merchandise value says, or this concept talks about, what is the value of the entire goods that are going through you. So this entire 30 rupees revenue will be called as my GMV. Okay? Right? So revenue is what the company made during the transaction. So this 5 rupees is my revenue, whereas 30 rupees will become my gross merchandise value. Clear? Now, why is this important? Because most of the startups today, especially in the e-commerce domain, right, are getting valued based on their gross merchandise value. So the more products I'm able to sell, irrespective of whether I'm making a loss. So in fact, the beauty of this, or rather the pitfall of this, is you might say the gross merchandise value is 30. In fact, what if I sold each soap only at 20 rupees? So if I'm selling it at 30 rupees, let's say monthly I'm able to sell 10 soaps. But if I'm selling it at 20 rupees, monthly I might be able to sell 20 soaps. So my GMV here will become 20 into 20, 400 rupees, Whereas a GMV here will become 30 into 10, which is 300 rupees. You say this is higher GMV, but actually what is happening? I am losing minus 5 rupees for every soap that I sold, because I am buying it at 25, and just to prop up this 400 rupees to show this GMV higher, I am taking a loss. So I am making 5 rupees loss, whereas this person here has a lower GMV but is actually making 5 rupees profit. So GMV by itself being high does not mean you're making more money or less money. You cannot say anything about it because it has got nothing to do with your expenses, your money as a company, right? It is just saying that how much worth of product you are selling, that's all, right? Next is profitability. Now there are different types of profitabilities. I'm not going to get into too many of them, but I'll just list out the few things that I talk about. Now profitability is nothing but the profit you make as compared to, now this keeps changing, the denominator keeps changing, right? So depending upon what the denominator has been used, you have a different name. So firstly, we talk about something called as a gross profit. What is the meaning of gross profit? In simplistic terms, gross profit talks about profit divided by expenses to make or the expenses that you incurred in making this particular product. Okay, so or rather, yes, so this is revenue minus your expenses. Now what is this revenue minus expenses? This expenses is not all your expenses. I'll explain what I mean. This is only related expenses, that to direct. Now what do I mean by direct related expenses and the profit here? So let's take an example where I have a company A which is making two products. I'm manufacturing two products, product X and product Y. Now there is one operator or there is one building for both. Okay, so there's only one building in which both of them are getting operated. The raw material here is 50 rupees, the raw material here is 60 rupees. Okay, and there is one worker here who takes, let's say per month I'm giving him 30,000. There's one worker here where per month I'm paying him 35,000. Now this worker directly can be associated to this product, whereas this worker can be associated directly to the product Y. But when you're talking about the building and its rent, how much money should I be allocating to X and how much money should I be allocating to Y? Similarly, if I'm talking about power, the electricity that is used, oh, I get a single bill of electricity, but how much should I be giving it to X? How much should I be giving it to Y? So these are not the direct ones which I can classify. Okay. Similarly, if I am the CEO of this company, I'm the managing director of this company, right? I'm the head of the company. I'm getting a salary, right? But how much of my money should be, see, this 30,000, this 35,000 are direct, no problem. But I am overseeing both. So how should I distribute my salary? Should I say 50% and 50%? So all these are not clear. So when I'm talking about gross profit, it talks about the profit amount that you're talking, or the profit amount you're making when you're taking care of this direct expenses. Then you're talking about operational profit. This is another type of profit. Operational profit talks about for only the operations. Again, I'll give you an example for this. What is a profit made only on the operations? Now, the meaning for this could be, let's take an example of a big airline company. Okay, let's say I'm starting an airline company. You all know that aeroplanes cost a ton, a huge amount of money. So let us say I spent 200 crores. That's actually a small amount when it comes to airlines. But yeah, let's say I spent 200 crores buying my airlines, right? I spent 200 crores buying my airlines. Now, once this airlines, let's say I bought 5 flights. I don't know what is the cost of a flight. I'm just assuming it's 40 crores or something like that. So let's say I got 5 flights. Now, when I'm talking about operations, it does not talk about the cost of the planes. It talks about the plane starting from point A, going to point B, taking people and dropping them off in point B, paying the expenses for your airports, staff, fuel, all these are called as operational expenses. So to run my company right now, without worry about purchasing of things means the airline or the aeroplane is already purchased. I don't keep purchasing it for every trip, correct? It's once it is bought, it is bought. But for every trip, I want to give them meals or food items, so that's going to be part of my operations. right? Fuel gets consumed again and again for every trip. That's a part of my operations. I have to pay salary for my staff. That's a part of my operation. Cleaning for the aeroplanes, maintenance for the aeroplanes, all these are called as operations, right? This is a fixed cost. So operational profit talks about, if I just say revenue for this trip minus the expenses for this trip without counting these fixed costs, without counting about these asset costs, that the cost that I spent in creating this asset, that is called as your operational profit. So if I say that, okay, this aeroplane I've bought, I spent a lot of money, that's okay, but first of all, if I run this aeroplane, is it making money or not? If it is not able to make money, then why should when will I ever pay back this 200 crores? When will I ever get back the 300 crores that I invested? If it is making small profits, slowly I can say that over a period of time, I might recover this entire 200 crores. But here itself, you're making a loss, then when I will never get that back. So this could be a bad investment for me, or this could be a bad proposal for me. So I will not be getting into it, right? Then you talk about EBITDA. So EBITDA and EBIT and PAT are related to each other. So let me explain each one clearly. EBITDA means earning, that is profit, earnings before interest, tax, depreciation and amortization. So basically this talks about how much money did the company make before paying any interest expense. If I took a loan to run my business, I have to pay interest. So without worrying about the interest, right? Without worrying about the tax to be paid to the government, without worrying about the depreciation and amortization, right? How much money did my company make? Typically, this is what will be called as the operational profit also. Okay, they are more or less similar in most of the cases. So EBITDA and operational profit are more or less the same, because you are not talking about money paid to the government. You're not talking about the money paid to the bankers as interest. You're not talking about depreciation or amortization at all. Okay, EBIT talks about, EBIT is earnings, that is money made before interest and taxes. So this is after subtracting your depreciation and amortization. After subtracting your depreciation and amortization. Whereas PAT is the final profit after paying taxes also. This is profit after tax. So every liability I've taken care of. So I got some money, I paid my interest, I paid my government taxes, I taken out my depreciation and amortization, all that is done. Still, if I'm left with some money, that is called as my profit after tax, which means definitely your company is making money. Okay, so these are the different types of profitabilities you have when you're talking about a company. The next thing we're going to talk about are, now we're going to enter the idea of business models, business plans, revenue model, revenue stream. So we are going to understand these terms, because again, from an entrepreneurship perspective, these are really important words. So first, let's understand what is the business model. So business model talks about how a company generates value for its stakeholders. If you notice, it is talking about creation of value. It does not talk about money at all. There is no idea of money. So what could be the values? So anything which is bettering something for somebody is basically value creation. It's not always money. For example, let's take the best example that I can think of is WhatsApp. As of today, WhatsApp, is it valuable to you or not? You are a customer using WhatsApp. Definitely it is valuable. I mean, we have more or less given up on SMSs. I don't think any of you now converse in SMSs. It's either WhatsApp or Telegram or some such app like that, but no more SMSs. So definitely there is value created, right? So the business model basically talks about, is there an idea or is there a company which can generate value to the customers? And if it can, how does it do it? This is called as the business model. This is the starting point. It is not only about money. The next part, so this is the first part of it. Then it goes into, okay, now the business model for WhatsApp was to help communication between people become easier. Then they talk about, okay, what should be the product? The product is the app. The delivery, how should the product reach the people? Play Store, Google Play Store, Apple Store. So basically you're making sure, okay, how will the product reach the people? Then they are talking about how will I make money out of it? Then comes the revenue model. So revenue model talks about how will I make money of the value that I created. So we will talk about revenue model also in the next slide. Okay? Utility creation, yes, utility creation. See, without utility, you will not have a product at all. Why will, so there won't be a business model at all without utility. At the end of the day, you are creating something which has a use. Only then people will buy it, right? Otherwise, why will they even buy it? Of course, I don't know how many of you know this. There was in Apple store, there was once a button. Okay, I don't know if it is still existing. It was priced at $1,000. The button has $1,000 to it. The button means the app. Sorry, not button. There's an app. Okay, it was costing $1,000 just to download it, and you press it. It makes a noise saying that I am rich or something like that. Nothing else. So, is there any utility to it? I don't know. Alright, did people buy it? Still people bought it because they want to show off that they have money. So they bought $1,000 worth of an app which does absolutely nothing but to say that, okay, I can splurge money. Okay? Business plan and business model, Karthikeya, it is there. I have business plan also next coming up. Just hold on. Okay? So utility. So typically when you're talking about a product, you're not talking about items like this, which are useless. Right? Usually utility creation basically means if there is no utility, your business will never take off. It goes without saying. Okay, that's the meaning of a business model. How can you make the lives of others better? Point number one, what is the idea behind it? Second, for this idea, what product will you make? Third, once the product is there, how will you deliver it? That is marketing, supply chain, all of that. Then you're talking about how will you make money out of it? When will you become profitable? All this put together is called as a business model. A part of this business model is called as a revenue model, which talks about how will you extract money from the customer for the value that you are providing. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this revenue model. So the revenue model talks about how the company gets the money for the value that it created. Now, if you look back at the example of WhatsApp, currently you and I don't pay money to WhatsApp at all, right? So the revenue model is still not clear about WhatsApp. I think they have some kind of business use where business users will pay some kind of money, but it's not really that clear. Okay, so they haven't figured out what could be the best revenue model yet. But if you look at examples like Google or YouTube, now what is the revenue model for YouTube? First of all, what is the business model of YouTube? Business model of YouTube is create value to customers by giving them content for free. You can go and watch kind of movies, episodes, funny stuff, live matches, everything on YouTube. If without paying any money, that's free. That's their whole idea. Make them come and sit in front of it. Then they're talking about, okay, once that is done, how will I get money out of it? That is where the revenue model comes in. So I got my customers hooked on. I gave them the value. How will I make money out of it? Now the revenue model for YouTube is not from the customer, the end viewer. The end viewer never pays any money to you. But what happens is he will be forced to watch 1 or 2 ads in between. And it is the ad creators who will pay you money for displaying their ads onto the YouTube platform. Right? So they are talking about not taking money from the end viewer, but making sure that the ads are displayed to the viewers, and the people who want to show the ads will have to pay Google. That is the revenue model. Right? So this is basically the difference between revenue model and business model. Revenue model is actually a part of the business model. Business model is much more than that. Revenue model typically talks about how do we make money out of it. Okay? So it could be, okay, so for example, it could be a subscription based model. I can offer my product. For example, there are like your Savan and other song apps, right? So you don't buy it outright, you subscribe. The downloading is free, but you subscribe month on month. So that's a subscription model, right? So that's a different model of revenue. Whereas some apps, they say you pay money, download, and then you can do whatever you want with it. That's basically one-time purchase. So there are different ways in which people will ask you to pay money, or companies will ask you to pay money. That model is basically what is called as a revenue model. Okay? Next is something called as a business plan. Now, business plan, basically, it's a document. Document means it's not always a paper. It could be a Word file, it could be an Excel sheet, whatever else it is, or a PPT for that matter, which describes how a business is supposed to be run going forward. Okay, usually for a startup, it defines the objective and how it goes. So basically, a business plan is a tangible representation of business model. So the business model that you have, which talks about everything, when done verbally or conceptually, that's basically a business model. When you put it in writing, when you put it in a very chronological way, a very easy to understand way, in a document, basically it becomes a business plan. It includes financials for the next few years. You talk about, okay, how much money will I make? Because of course, business model has revenue as a part of it, expenses as a part of it. It's very, very important for you to get your funding if you are an entrepreneur or a loan from a bank, because the bank wants to know, if I give you money, will you be able to repay it back to me? If yes, how many years or how many months will it take for you to give the money back? So I need to know what are your projections. I need to know what is your growth idea. I want to know what is your profitability. Right now you're making a loss, that's okay, but will you become profitable in the future? And if yes, what is the future? How much more money can you make? So all this becomes a part of your business plan. Right, Karthikeya? Yes, Ritesh is saying YouTube also has subscription. That's a new revenue model they've spoken about. They've introduced in the last, I think, 6-7 months. I've been a YouTube subscriber. That way you pay about 130 rupees or 140 rupees per month and you get ad-free music. And there are a couple of other benefits also. I can close my phone and the music still plays. They're nice things that happen when you do this in YouTube. So YouTube has also gone into subscription mode. Yes, you're right, Ritesh. So yes, that's added revenue stream for them. Right? Okay, so this brings to this new word, revenue stream. Revenue stream, like a stream is what? Stream is a flow of water. So where all the revenue can come from is basically called as a revenue stream. So YouTube has 2 or 3 revenue streams. One is subscription. The other revenue stream could be through ads. Okay, and so on and so forth. So it has revenue streams like this. If you talk about Apple, what are the revenue streams of Apple? First is product. Next is services. The product and the services that the Apple gives it to its own customers. Then it could be App Store. Or each one is a stream to give money to Apple. So this is called as a revenue stream. Clear? Right. So thanks to Ritesh. I've also cleared this revenue stream. I kind of forgot to put that in the PPT. So good of you, Ritesh, to point that out. Right. Let's move on now. Next thing we're going to talk about when it comes to a startup, you need to understand something called as a copyright, a patent. Then we talk about a trademark. So we're going to look at the difference between these things. So what is a copyright? So copyright typically is an intellectual property that gives its owner. So it's a right of the owner to have exclusive usage of this particular thing, typically in the work of creative, typically in the world of creative work. So copyright is a word that will be used typically for writing songs or typically novels, or even movies have copyrights actually. So this basically says that if there is an idea in the creative world, the problem why, I'll explain to you why this copyright happens typically for a creative world is when you're talking about creation, right, an idea, you can't say that this particular idea cannot come to anybody else. Okay, so, but then you were the first to bring that idea, so there should be some protection for you. So it's called as a copyright. So it's given for creative work, usually for a limited amount of time. It is not done forever. Obviously, right, you can't say that this idea came to me, so nobody should ever use it ever again in the history again. It can't happen like that. Okay, so the creative work may be literary, artistic, educational, or musical, or any other. All of these are creative forms. So you can have copyright for any of these. Okay, it is intended to protect the original expression of an idea in the form of creative work, but not the idea itself. So remember, you cannot, I go back to the word that I just said. You cannot say that this idea should not come to anybody else. That is not what copyright is. The copyright is, okay, the idea is there. Manifestation of the idea in this particular way is what is protected. For example, you can't say that murder mystery is copyrighted. And there are so many murder mysteries. But a murder mystery in this fashion, that is a copyright. You can't say that nobody can write murder mysteries. That's not possible. Right? Okay, Ritesh, time limit typically is author's life plus 70 years. Again, this keeps changing from place to place or country to country. Shiba, paintings, I mean, you can't, copyright of a painting means, yeah, you can't repaint. Even if you repaint, why will anybody buy it? Right? If there is Mona Lisa, there is only one Mona Lisa. There are enough replicas of it, but they'll all be called as Mona Lisa's replicas. Right? But there's only one Mona Lisa which is there in France, Louvre Museum, I guess, art museum. Anyway, so that's what creative work does. It guarantees that the rendition of an idea is not copied, but the idea itself can be used by others. That's the whole idea. That's the whole thing, right? So that's the idea of a copyright. Okay. Next thing is patent. So what is a patent? Now patent is similar to a copyright, but this time it is for this is for inventions. This is for typically it is for tangible things. It is for tangible things which are non-creative in nature. Okay, typically I'm saying. Okay, when I say non-creative, I'm talking about see, invention is creative at the end of the day, right? So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm moving away from literature or the arts, the fine arts kind of side. I'm getting more into technology and science now. Okay, so typically patent comes in this domain. Once again, the idea is same. The whole process or the reason for this patent is same. If I am spending my life's time, effort and money in making something, somebody should not be able to copy it tomorrow morning and then make money out of it. Right? So then why will I spend my time and energy in inventing something new if somebody can just copy it off? So to protect that time and effort and money that I'm spending, I can patent my product in the way in which it is and then sell it, and only I will be able to make money, not anybody else. Okay, that's where patent comes in. Once again, a patent protects the idea. So here, the idea itself is protected. So if I talk about somebody, so in fact, you would have heard about this news. There is a foldable the foldable technology. So somebody who thinks about it first can go ahead and patent the way in which the technology can be existing. Alright, so that's basically you're talking about a patent protects an idea itself. Sometimes it also protects the process that makes the idea a reality. For example, if you look at pharmaceuticals, the drug manufacturers, drugs, when I'm not talking about narcotics, okay, this drugs are basically pharmaceuticals. So synthesis of molecules. This process can be patented, saying that okay, if I mix this and this in this particular fashion, I'll get this end product. Your end product cannot be patented. Right, because this is not the only way in which you could probably make an end product, but this process is patented. If somebody else can figure out another way of making it, they can still do it. But your process is patented because that is unique, that you have discovered, right? So, or invented for that matter. So that's the way in which patent works. And the last one or two things, I think we are already beyond the threshold of 1 hour, so I'll just take one or two small things. Trademark and trade secret. So I'll end with these 2 points. So what is a trademark? Trademark is basically a word, phrase or a symbol that identifies and distinguishes the source of goods, one party from the other. I'm sure all of you know what is a trademark. They'll have a small T on top of it. It could be a logo, it could be a phrase, it could be anything which distinctly identifies a product with it. Okay, so nobody else can copy it and say and use it for their own product. Okay, so that's basically called as a trademark. The last thing is a trade secret. Now, trade secret is very interesting. This does not have protection by law. There is no law that can protect a trade secret. So first of all, what is a trade secret? A trade secret is something which a few people know and it is not widely known by the others. But there is no protection for it per se. Okay, if somebody can copy it, they can copy it. But it's like, typically it's a secret, right? Secret means only few people know and others don't know. But if others come to know, you can't say go and sue them, or you can't say that, okay, how did you come to know? I'm going to sue you in the court. You can't, because your secret is not protected. But one thing that trade secret can do is, if you register a trade secret, the owners take responsibility to keep it a secret, but more importantly, it gives the owner the right to restrict others from disclosing it. So let's say you are, a typical example is your Coca-Cola, they make a lot of fuss about the recipe, how they make the drink, while you can argue about it. At the end of the day, it's sugar syrup. But yeah, there is a lot of halla about their recipe being a secret. Similarly, it goes with a lot of food chains also. Book symbols come under books come under copyright, book symbols come under trademark. So if you're talking about publishing house, a publishing house symbol come under a trademark. Okay? Small r is registered. Small r is registered. Okay, that's a different thing. Anyway, so getting back to this. So if the idea here is, when I say I am somebody who has a particular recipe, right? I'm a food chain, I have a particular recipe. This way I make my food, it is absolutely tasty. Now there is no way in which I can stop others from making the food in the same way. But the point is, I will not disclose how I'm making it to everybody else. And the beauty of this is, if I register my trade secret, while somebody might be brilliant enough to understand what I did on their own, if they figured it out on their own, then there's nothing I can do. But I can stop my employees to go outside and talk about it. So I will have a reasonable power to stop others from disclosing it, who worked with me. So if somebody came from my competitor to know what my trade secret, goes back and then divulges it, I can sue this person for sure. So that's what trade secret is all about. Okay, and last is a license. What is a license? License is basically, it is granted by a party to another party. It's an agreement of element where, so it's like this. I have a copyright of a book. Now a movie director wants to take this book and make it into a movie. He can't do it directly because this artwork belongs to me. He can't use the same story. So what does he have to do? He has to come to me, take the license, the permission. So license is an agreement where I have the legal ownership of something and I'm letting you use it. Such a thing is called as a license. Right? So guys, this is basically what I had in store for you today. We have discussed a lot of theory, barely one question we were able to do. In the next session, we're going to take a few questions and end with a lot of knowledge on government ideas, or government, what is the government doing in India, especially Indian government, to help the startups. Right? Thank you guys, and see you in the next session on Monday, 3 p.m. All the best.